For 15 years, Mike Wolfe has become the face of the show American Pickers, loved by millions of viewers for his down-to-earth personality and his passion for forgotten antiques. On screen, he was the hero who uncovered hidden treasures, a man who celebrated friendship and human connection. But behind that warm public image existed an entirely different, double life. Few people realized that the man who spent his life searching for hidden value in old objects was also someone who let the most important things in his own life slip away. The cracks in his marriage, the bitter collapse of his bond with his closest friend, and the controversies surrounding his private life exposed a painful contradiction. Was the Mike Wolfe audiences saw on television truly real, or merely a polished layer of paint hiding something far more complicated? Why did a television icon lose the trust of viewers once the secrets behind the scenes began to surface? Join us as we revisit the journey of Mike Wolfe, from his ambitious early beginnings to the moment he found himself confronting the collapse of the very legacy he spent decades building. Mike Wolfe's story did not begin in the elegant antique stores of Nashville, but in the struggling alleyways of America's Midwest during the 1960s. Born in Illinois, Mike spent his childhood observing the world through broken fragments. While other children were fascinated by shiny new toys, 4-year-old Mike became strangely captivated after discovering an abandoned bicycle left beside the road. To everyone else, it was nothing more than a pile of rusting scrap metal, but through Mike's eyes, it was something waiting to be brought back to life. The moment he dragged that bicycle home and wiped away the dirt to reveal the gleaming metal underneath was also the moment his philosophy of life was born. Value never truly disappears. It simply waits for someone patient enough to recognize and appreciate it. Mike's instinct for business emerged early, almost inevitably. He was not simply a collector. He was a philosopher of objects. Mike deeply understood the rules surrounding old possessions. They carried within them the soul of an era and fragments of their previous owners' lives. By restoring old bicycles and selling them for profit, he not only earned his first money, but also learned how to look beyond ruined appearances. He discovered that the value of an object did not lie in the number written on a price tag, but in the story it could tell to those willing to listen. The most important turning point in this formative stage of his life came through his fateful meeting with Frank Fritz, his brother in spirit, business partner, and the perfect counterpart to his world. They met during their youth, two like-minded souls wandering through old garages, deserted scrapyards, and dusty storage buildings. Between them, words were rarely necessary. A single glance exchanged while standing before an unusual object was enough for them to understand its worth. Their friendship was built on absolute trust, on years spent sharing cheap meals, and on the overwhelming excitement of discovering forgotten treasures hidden inside decaying barns and abandoned warehouses. Those years shaped Mike Wolfe into a man who was both rough around the edges and extraordinarily sharp. It was a period in which he learned to understand people through their possessions, a skill that would later become his most powerful weapon in front of television cameras. He was not merely buying objects, he was buying connection. Yet ironically, the very world filled with nostalgic relics and memories slowly separated him from the real human relationships he should have been protecting. The lessons about persistence and seeing through appearances may have carried him to fame, but they also built an invisible wall between him and the people who truly needed him most. Even so, during this chapter of his life, the bond between Mike and Frank still stood as the purest reflection of the picker philosophy. They were not simply collecting objects, they were piecing together forgotten fragments of American history, one item at a time. But eventually, the overwhelming force of fame would become the storm that tested everything they had spent years building together. In 2000, Mike Wolfe officially turned his dream into reality with the opening of Antique Archaeology in LeClaire, Iowa. It was not merely a business, it became a sanctuary preserving the forgotten relics he had spent years searching for. When a second location opened in Nashville, Mike's reputation expanded far beyond the boundaries of small-town America. He was no longer just a local antique dealer, He had become a storyteller preserving history through physical objects. Then, in 2010, came the opportunity that changed everything: American Pickers. The program quickly became a global phenomenon, drawing more than 5 million viewers per episode. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz, once two men wandering through dusty barns and junkyards, suddenly found themselves at the height of fame. Bright studio lights, television contracts, and the admiration of millions transformed their lives into what many considered the American dream. Yet behind the excitement of success, the spotlight also began creating fractures, neither of them fully recognized at the time. The speed of Mike's rise pushed him into the role of a television celebrity, forcing him to transform from a free-spirited antique hunter into a carefully watched public figure. This transition brought not only wealth, but also gradually altered the way he viewed relationships, where privacy slowly gave way to scripted moments and the pressures of producing multi-million-dollar television entertainment. While millions admired the successful image of Mike Wolfe on screen, behind the scenes, his nearly two-decade relationship with Jodie Faith was beginning to face challenges that even fame could no longer hide. To understand the emotional distance growing inside his personal life, we must look closely at the long years Jodie spent quietly waiting in the shadows of her husband's rising stardom. The love story between Mike Wolfe and Jodie Faith became a tragic example of how fame can sometimes poison emotional connection. They met in 1994, at a time when Mike was still a young man with uncertain dreams and no real understanding of celebrity. Jodie stood beside him faithfully, patiently supporting him through 18 long years, while he devoted himself entirely to building the antique archaeology empire. Yet that loyalty never seemed to receive the recognition it truly deserved. Many fans later wondered how a man so skilled at recognizing the hidden value of forgotten antiques could become so blind to the value of the woman who had devoted her youth to him. It took nearly 2 decades before he finally proposed. That delay represented more than just the passing of time. It reflected a silence filled with uncertainty about commitment itself. Although the birth of their daughter Charlie in 2012, a little girl who courageously faced life with a cleft lip from birth, briefly brought them closer together, it also marked the period when Mike's fame truly began to consume his life. The experience led them to support Operation Smile together, helping create the public image of a loving family overcoming hardship beneath the glow of media attention. But behind the warm photographs and carefully presented public moments, invisible pressures were already taking hold inside their relationship. Jodie had remained beside Mike from the days when he was an unknown mechanic until he became a television celebrity, creating a uniquely powerful bond between them, but also planting the seeds of emotional distance. The gap between the real Mike and the television version of Mike gradually became so wide that Jodie, the person who understood him best, may have started feeling like a stranger inside her own home. Their relationship survived enormous challenges, from raising children together to facing Jodie's health struggles, but eventually the fractures that had existed beneath the surface for years could no longer remain hidden. Looking back at those 18 years of waiting, many people no longer see the romance of enduring love, but instead the sacrifice of a woman slowly overshadowed by the ambitions of the man she chose to stand beside. The real storm arrived in 2013, when Jodie Faith was diagnosed with stage 2 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It should have been the moment their marriage became stronger than ever, yet it also exposed the emotional distance between them more clearly than before. On social media, Mike continued presenting the image of a devoted husband, openly supporting his wife throughout her battle with illness. Fans looked at those photographs and believed they were witnessing a love story powerful enough to survive anything. Yet behind the carefully crafted image of happiness shown to the public, cracks had already been spreading quietly through their everyday lives. The resilience Jodie showed throughout her treatment stood in complete contrast to Mike's non-stop busyness. At the very moment when his wife needed a quiet presence and a shoulder to lean on after exhausting chemotherapy sessions, Mike was being swept away on endless trips filming American Pickers. His constant absence was not merely a matter of physical distance, but an emotional void. For Jodie, the woman who had stood beside him since his struggling early days, the shift in Mike's priorities became a pain even more agonizing than the illness itself. The breaking point came in June 2020. Just 1 month after Mike posted an emotional tribute celebrating the 6th anniversary of his wife being cancer-free, the two quietly separated. The revelation felt like a bucket of cold water thrown onto the faith of those who had long viewed them as a symbol of lasting happiness. The way they parted, silently and suddenly, proved that the public displays of gratitude on social media had merely been a fragile mask concealing a collapse that could no longer be repaired. This breakdown was not simply the end of a marriage. It marked the collapse of the trust audiences had placed in Mike. Once the image of a successful, family-loving man on television was exposed as deeply unstable in reality, people began asking themselves, in Mike Wolfe's life, what values were truly cherished. That silent fracture became the foundation for a legal storm and even deeper consequences that were ultimately beyond his control. When the velvet curtain of married life officially closed in November 2020, Jodie Faith filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. This was not the peaceful separation the public had once imagined. Court records revealed a complex financial picture that perfectly reflected the enormous gap between a multi-million-dollar television star and the woman who had stood beside him when he had nothing. This legal battle was not only about dividing assets, but about measuring years of sacrifice in precise financial terms. By 2021, the settlement agreement became public, leaving many fans stunned by its scale. Jodie Faith received valuable properties in Nashville and North Carolina, real estate treasures Mike had accumulated throughout his rise to fame. And it did not stop there. Mike was also required to pay more than $5.2 million to divide their shared assets, along with $634,000 in spousal support. One particularly striking clause involved the division of profits from the first 10 seasons of American Pickers, showing that Jodie held tangible rights to the very television legacy her former husband had built. This divorce did not merely consume a massive amount of money, it also dealt a heavy blow to the humble picker image Mike had spent years creating. Being forced to share the rewards of a program built on sincerity and friendship unintentionally exposed a more pragmatic side of celebrity life. In Mike Wolfe's world, it seemed that even the closest human relationships could ultimately be assigned a monetary value in legal documents. Even more tragic was the fact that this collapse did not end with marriage. Mike's relentless pursuit of glamour and financial battles created a massive emptiness in his personal life, where the most important companion of his career, Frank Fritz, was slowly being left behind, leading to a heartbreak far more devastating than any financial loss. If the divorce from Jodie Faith was a personal fracture, then the collapse of Mike Wolfe's friendship with Frank Fritz became the greatest shock for loyal American Pickers fans. For decades, they were more than colleagues. They were the soul of the program, two kindred spirits traveling together in old trucks across America. Yet behind the effortless chemistry on screen, a deep abyss had quietly formed. When Frank gradually disappeared and was eventually dismissed in 2021, the public was stunned to realize that the friendship had already been gone for a very long time. The painful truth was later revealed by Frank himself. Mike had not contacted him at all during the 2 difficult years Frank spent hospitalized with a severe back injury. While Mike continued his glamorous television journeys, his closest friend was battling physical pain and crushing loneliness. Mike's silence was not merely geographical distance. It felt like an unbelievably cold betrayal of the man who had helped him build this empire from nothing. The tragedy reached its peak when Frank suffered a stroke in 2022 and passed away a year later at the age of 60. In that moment, Mike publicly shared emotional tributes, praising Frank as a beloved brother. Yet instead of sympathy, those statements sparked fierce backlash from audiences. To many fans, the words came far too late and were even seen as one final performance meant to protect his public image. Frank's death did not merely take away a talented television personality, It also buried the audience's belief in the friendship that had been built before their eyes on television. The painful distance during Frank's final years exposed another side of Mike. A man who seemed to have lost genuine emotional connections with the people closest to him because he had become consumed by pursuing other values he considered more important. By 2026, looking back at the journey of American Pickers, many viewers were left with a profound sense of disappointment. Ratings had declined significantly, not only because of changes in the content, but because audiences realized the true soul of the show. The friendship between Mike and Frank had vanished forever. Frank's absence became an emptiness that could never be replaced, stripping the program of its authenticity and leaving behind only the appearance of an industrial entertainment product. In his personal life, Mike Wolfe has since begun a new chapter with model Letitia Klein. However, his image in the eyes of the public has changed permanently. The contrast between the generous, kind-hearted Mike Wolfe seen on television and the real-life Mike Wolfe, the man who delayed proposing for years, remained silent while his closest friends suffered and separated from his wife just after her recovery from serious illness, became impossible to ignore. Everything he built is now overshadowed by the harsh contrast between the character on television and the man behind it. Mike Wolfe's life has become an expensive lesson about sacrifice and trade-offs. He spent his entire life searching for and celebrating forgotten treasures hidden inside dusty barns and abandoned warehouses. Yet ironically, he overlooked the most priceless things standing right beside him. Today, Mike's legacy is no longer measured by the number of antiques he collected, but by the fractures left behind in his human relationships. As the lights of television slowly fade, what remains is not the memory of million-dollar collections, but the audience's growing doubts about the authenticity of a man they once admired. His story reminds us that while searching for the value of the past, we must never neglect the people in our present, because once genuine human connections are lost, no antique, no matter how valuable, can ever fill that emptiness. What do you think about Mike Wolfe's journey? Has fame become too high a price for everything he lost along the way? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gave you a fresh perspective on the life of the famous treasure hunter, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future documentaries uncovering the untold stories behind television and film legends. Thank you for joining us on this journey.